Listen. You can hear the sound of the morning doves cooing over in the park. Human sounds too, now and then. The fire whistle from the firehouse and the trains wailing as they crisscross the lake plain. It's fall, near harvest, and the rich scent of the sweet grapes permeates everything, from the vineyards that surround us all the way from Silver Creek, New York in the east to northeast Pennsylvania in the west. If you grew up here, you know what I'm talking about. You never forget the fragrance of harvest. Like now. This is Westfield, New York. It's a pretty little town full of mostly good people. There's always a few that make it frustrating sometimes, and fortunately there were mostly good customers here at Ricketts Market back in the day. If you take away everything else, strip it down to the bare essentials, the heart, the soul of this town, it all comes down to, well, it all comes down to the vineyards, the grapes, but most importantly, the people. This is the essence of what makes up Westfield. Our village and town have been filled with outgoing and gregarious, hard-working people from the very beginning that have helped make us all who we are and what our fair village has turned into today. Yes, we've had a few famous ones, but mostly just hard-working people like you, like me. So many are gone now, gone to spirit, spirited by the Almighty, like the grapes so many of them tended to. Just missed in the vineyards in the scheme of things, like me. You know, legend has it that the spirits of those that have moved on gather in the light of the full harvest moon each year when the rooster crows. And they remain here until that rooster crows a second time to signal their departure. They return to briefly be a part of what they loved and lived for here in Westfield. And to remind us and themselves just where we came from and how we got here. That's always a good thing to know and remember. And they almost have one thing in common. They have a love for this place, this town, this village, these people, on this harvest moon. Welcome home, my friends. It's that time for us where we can again briefly become a part of our fair village. Now, these people may not know all of you. Some of you have been gone for quite a while. Some of you may not be familiar with them. So with your permission, let me introduce you. Carrie Twing. Now, Carrie was indeed a very special woman. She was a noted spiritualist, a feminist, a lecturer, a writer. She was here intellectually way before her time and was a brave and brilliant woman long before those who were desired traits for a woman. Elaine Phillips. Elaine was one of Westfield's artistic lots. She was a memorable actress. She was a supporter of the arts. We watched Elaine on stage so many times. She was a memorable sight. Vincent Powers. Vincent was an American champion jockey and trainer. He was most notably a Kentucky Derby winner and a noted and respected horse trainer. Now, Vincent brought much fame, much recognition to our town. Renata Ray Evans. Now, Ree was a vital member of our community, especially in our hospital and our school system. And prior to filling those roles, she was a vital and active member of our United States military and served in World War II. Now last, certainly not least, is Hiller James Minton. Hiller is one of Westfield's finest. And like many from his era, he took part in the war effort. Hiller, too, was a World War II hero, a warrior, and also a very good friend to many here in this town, myself included. Now, community theater and the arts have always played a large role in the Westfield community. One of the major members of that movement devoted much time and much talent to that endeavor. She was a pianist, a teacher, a mother, but perhaps most importantly, a performer. Elaine Phillips.
I've just come from the sanctuary, right downstairs. I have to admit, it was my favorite stage in all of Westfield. And I just had to wear this costume one more time. I remember the thrill of walking across that stage as Lady Alice in A Man for All Seasons. I even brought the script. You know, that production, A Man for All Seasons, was probably one of the most elaborate productions I was ever in. Our brilliant Alan Cook designed and built a 6-level stage right in the sanctuary. It's amazing. And the camaraderie of the Lakeshore Little Theater couldn't be beat. It was fabulous, even with a 16-year-old Rick Mascaro. I know some of you have never heard of me, and some of you know me as Elaine Bell, still others as Elaine Phillips, and others as Elaine Watson. It's true, I've lived my life on many stages and played many parts. But I'm so glad I got to come back tonight. I'd like to be known and understood. So let me begin by introducing myself. I'm Elaine Bell Phillips Watson. Act 1. On stage, I could do anything, but in real life, I was taught to be a lady and to always hold back. I was born Eloise Elaine to Louisa and Hosea Bell. That was 1927, Belfast, New York. I had light hazel eyes and rather thick, dark hair that I used to cover my rather large, protruding ears. My father was a true romantic. He named me Elaine. You know Elaine, who loved Lancelot and Sir Walter Scott's The Lady of the Lake. I adored my father. You know, he had light blue eyes and dark coal hair. That hair never did turn gray, not even in his 70s. Hosea was the youngest of a very large family, and his mother apparently just ran out of names by the time he came around, so she picked a name randomly from the Bible. When Hosea's father deserted the family, it was the youngest, Hosea, who helped support the family by taking in laundry. And my dad would talk about heating the irons in the fire for hours at a time and then carefully pressing the petticoats and skirts that had been dragged along the streets of Hinsdale, New York by the ladies that wore them. By 1918, Dad enlisted, and he was fighting in the muddy trenches of France. When he returned home, he married the local telephone operator Louisa Bell. He also worked as a railroad foreman with all his brothers for 47 accident-free years. My brother Howard was born and lived only one day. 2 years later, I was born to a still grieving and overprotective mother and my adoring father. Back to me. Mother was tough on me, expecting me to remain ladylike and formal at all times. Ride a bike? Swim? Oh no, that wasn't suitable for me. She insisted I hold back and always play it safe. I was obedient, but by high school, I needed some freedom. I acted in all the school plays, the musicals, chorus, editor of the school newspaper, and had quite a few friends, even a very handsome young man, George, who was pursuing my affections. Of course, Mother didn't think George was an advantageous match, so she chased him away. But more about George later. I couldn't wait to graduate from high school. I had some plans. I wanted to go to Manhattan. I wanted to be a professional actress, maybe a reporter. But of course, Mother didn't think that was a suitable occupation for such a lovely young lady as me. So I was sent to Houghton College, where I majored in English literature, and just to appease Mother, I minored in education, that being a more suitable occupation, I suppose. The religious rules at Houghton College were very oppressive, and frankly just made me want to be a little more free and creative than ever before. Following graduation, actually I dreaded being a teacher, but I was willing to do just about anything for some more independence. So I accepted an out-of-town role at the Ripley Central School, the role of teacher, where I taught English. I directed Ripley school plays and their newspaper, and had my own apartment, which my mother insisted on picking out. Would you believe she even told my landlord to keep track of my comings and goings? I loved Mom, but she was just too controlling. Unfortunately, later that year, Mother passed away unexpectedly, and I grieved that we hadn't had the time to fully heal our relationship. In my grief, I turned to a fellow Ripley teacher. We were married, Laverne Phillips. Laverne enlisted in the Army during the Korean conflict, left for basic training, and almost immediately I found out I was expecting our first child. I just knew it was going to be a daughter. So I wrote to Vern and I asked him, should we name her Jacqueline or Corina? Now, Vern was aware that the Army censored all mail. They feared espionage. So he thought I was writing a code. That is, to find out where he wanted to be shipped. That is, if he picked Corina, that meant he wanted to go to Korea. If he picked Jacqueline, it meant he wanted to go to Japan. He wanted to go to Japan. Thus, he named our daughter Jacqueline without really meaning to do so. When Vern returned home, he built our dream home in Fredonia, New York. He worked as a guidance counselor in many area schools, including Ripley, Sherman, Cassadaga, and others. William and Robert were born shortly afterward. I think I performed my expected roles of wife and mother rather elegantly, or at least I tried to. And we lived happily in Fredonia. One of the reasons for that is that Vern worked really long hours, which gave me a lot of independence. I used that freedom to play recurring roles in the Dunkirk and Fredonia players. There were so many productions I was cast in. I really had an opportunity to hone my acting skills and made many, many dear friends. One of the most extravagant productions was the musical Showboat. What a blast. In 1961, though, Vern moved our family to Westfield. He needed to shorten his work commute. Now, I did play the dutiful wife, but I was bitter about leaving our dream home. And I was miserable leaving all my theater friends in Fredonia. miserable. I was miserable, that is, until I joined Westfield's Lakeshore Little Theater. Wow, what a talented group of players. I just loved acting with Linda Carlson Dunn, Bud Neubauer, Dickie Ellis, David Wurst, Tim Drake, Murray Mintz, Len Cook, Rick and Joni Mascaro, Dick Crawford, George Rubin, Carl Cash, Alan Cook, Betty LaCuche, the list went on and on. I was cast in so many productions. They included Harvey, Auntie Mame, The Odd Couple, Philadelphia Story, and Blythe Spirit. And I was cast as the lead in Mad Woman of Chaillot, the heroine in The Drunkard, and female lead in A Man for All Seasons. Now, in between stage productions, there were other creative outlets for me. I took writing courses at SUNY Fredonia, and all the while I was a feature reporter for the Dunkirk Observer. I also wrote stories and jokes and sold them to Reader's Digest, and I always filled our home with piano playing, show tunes, classical music. Whenever possible, I also snuck out to the Methodist Church to play the pipe organ. Although no one knew the real me, I always remained ladylike, and I played my expected roles well. Wife, mother, writer, musician, and of course actress. Act 2, a tough act to follow. When my beloved father passed away, I was lost. I felt unloved. And I was compelled at last to not play it safe. I had to make some changes, and I had to do it without worrying about expected roles or always being a lady. Vern and I divorced, and I moved to Washington, D.C. for all the urban resources that I always longed for. One birthday, 1981, I received a call from my daughter like I always did. Incredibly, she was trapped in a Las Vegas high-rise hotel fire. Her hotel room door was completely engulfed in flames. She narrowly escaped, others not so lucky. But this close call brought me real clarity. I wanted to go back home to the safety of my Westfield community. When I returned to Westfield, I bought a home that I loved on Colburn Street, and that house had an extra apartment. Guess who rented the apartment? Westfield Academy and Central School had a brand new music teacher, Kent Knappenberger. Then a few years later, his beautiful bride, Nanette, and their classical music entertained me for years. I was happy with the choices I'd made, and I felt in control of my life. Of course, life had another lesson for me to learn. One evening in 1987, I was overjoyed to hear from my daughter I was going to have my first grandchild. Only a couple of hours later, though, I was devastated to learn that my youngest child, Bob, had been diagnosed with AIDS. Back then, AIDS was always fatal, and it was a cruel disease. Bob, who was my joy, moved back to my home, back to his community of Westfield for his last year, back to safety. But Westfield wasn't safe. The fear of AIDS in our town was palpable then. One doctor would not treat Bob or even see him. That doctor told us we were never, ever to go to the emergency room at the Westfield Memorial Hospital. I was refused treatment as well. Classmates, friends wouldn't even enter my home. The few that did are especially dear to me, though. Losing my beautiful young son this way, it broke my spirit. No, that's a ridiculous ladylike thing to say. It didn't break my spirit. I was so angry. I disconnected and I retreated for years. Act 3. When you're on stage, you are on your own and free. I always thought being on stage was my true love. I never expected to be happy again. But as it turned out, there was a handsome hero waiting in the wings of my third act. Remember George, the boy my mother chased away? He called me after 55 years, out of the blue. And incredibly, we were still in love. You know, when George looked at me, I just knew he was seeing that 17-year-old girl that he had applauded as I walked across the high school stage. Much like my father, George adored me. With George, I found true love. I found myself. And my need to play a part seemed to disappear. We were married in our 70s, surrounded by loving Westfield friends and family who thought it was the most romantic wedding. It was. Well, it's been wonderful to come back, share my memories, and it's given me the chance to say how delighted I am to see Lakeshore Center for the Arts bring back performing arts in Westfield in a big way. It's certainly brought me much joy and happiness, and I know it will do it for many, many people. I wish you all a fulfilling life as well. Epilogue. You know, in life, women are not given center stage. But center stage is magic. There's nothing like it. It just took me a little too long to realize the world is your stage and it's up to you to own it. And of course, always remember, the show must go on.